Conseguiu fazer o ajuste? Conseguiram fazer os ajustes? Ok, ok.
Já está transmitindo, pode começar, sim.
Sim. Deixa eu só aceitar mais algumas pessoas aqui. Bem, bom dia a todos. Eu sou Cirlei Lourenço, sou psicóloga, analista junguiana, atual presidente do IPAC, o Instituto de Psicologia Analítica de Campinas, que é filiado à JB, a Associação Junguiana do Brasil, e à IAP. Eu gostaria de agradecer a presença de todos que estão aqui conosco pelo Zoom e pelo YouTube. Agradecer também a presença da nossa tradutora, Isa Carvalho, e conseguimos encontrar um horário possível para esse encontro ser realizado, ao Daniel, né, que sempre está conosco, a membro analista, a Débora Landucci, que fez a ponte entre o Instituto e a Susa. Muito obrigada, Débora. E gostaria também de agradecer à Editora Vozes, apoiadora e tradutora do livro, né, dessa importante obra para o público brasileiro. O meu volume já está em mãos aqui, né? Eu espero que vocês consigam adquirir e queiram adquirir e adquiram esse volume, essa importante obra. Aproveito agora também para dizer que a Editora Vozes ela está dando um desconto de 30% no valor do livro, né? Até o dia 30/11, com IPAC Susan 30, tá? Então vocês podem adquirir o livro. Bem-vinda, Susan, é um prazer receber você aqui conosco. Susan é Ph.D, é uma renomada analista junguiana e psicóloga clínica com formação em Zurique, Suíça, com sua clínica em Paradise Valley, no Arizona, como membro da IAP, da International Association of Analytical Psychology. Ela é uma palestrante e professora internacional ativa em programas junguianos globalmente reconhecida. Sua experiência é consolidada através de várias publicações influentes em psicologia analítica. É autora do livro O Efeito da Ausência do Pai nas Filhas, Desejo Paterno, Ferida Paterna, de 2023, publicado no Brasil pela Editora Vozes também. Além de seu mais novo lançamento no Brasil, o livro Síndrome do Impostor, a personalidade como ser, na psicologia analítica, também pela Editora Vozes. Susan, eu dou a palavra a você. Muito obrigada e seja muito bem-vinda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I just want to say before I begin, Isa, the translation is very broken up. So I don't know if that's going to happen in the Portuguese as well, but it doesn't come through very well. So just so you know. So let me begin. I begin with a quote from Octavio Paz. Beyond myself, somewhere, I wait for my arrival. And let me also share my screen.
Um moment, please. Está picando, Isa, a tua tradução.
Yeah,
Está picando.
the sound is broken up. Is it better now? Is it all right? Yes.
A tradução está picando bastante.
Okay. Tell me when I should begin.
Tá. Eu aproveito para informar vocês que estão chegando agora, um bom dia, que é preciso colocar no mais interpretação e colocar em português para que seja, vocês escutem na tradução de português. Estamos fazendo alguns ajustes técnicos. Só um momentinho. Parece que sim.
Is it all right now?
Parece que sim. Se tiver algum problema, eu volto aqui.
Yes, it's much better. Yes. I think it is all right now. It's much better. So, okay. Okay, so can I begin? Okay. Okay, here we begin. Let me read the quote at the beginning again. It says, "Beyond myself somewhere, I wait for my arrival." That's from Octavio Paz. Just 1 week apart, 2 people contacted me with the same issue, a feeling of emptiness, present but not really there. They verbalized. Nobody knew them. No parent had asked, as they, the parents, were preoccupied with themselves. No mirrors for them existed, and to this day, they did not look in mirrors. This is a complicated person, assuming they are a fraud. There is a touching and tender vulnerability, raw and unexplored potential lying underneath. The imposter and what is here called the as-if personality is defined by the central question, who am I really? The answer will reflect identity with goals, purposes, meanings in life. Identity in this more encompassing sense is not fixed, handed down, or unconscious. A person's identity is a matter of what they are about and is reflected by accessing the passions of life. The phrase, as if, can be characterized by the narcissism of facade, fragility, fraudulence, vulnerable, hounded by a wall of impenetrability, veiled in an appealing but elusive persona. Behind all this is a precarious sense of self, living on illusions, the continual reestablishing of these illusions requires much effort. Eventually, collapse occurs as the center cannot hold due to the lack of attachment at the core, creating a maladaptive life response. The energy is called inward to encounter what feels like the void. Appearance and pretense establish a clear distinction between being and appearing. What is hidden and what is known?
Isa, tá picando muito. Tá bem. No inglês tá indo bem, o pessoal tá falando, mas no português não.
Ah. Oh, wait a second. Just a minute, maybe. Just a second. Yeah, I'm on English. Let me.
Fechando as câmeras para ver se melhora. Então, enquanto ele se organiza, eu vou pedir para que vocês, para escutarem em português a tradução, estejam indo nos 3 pontinhos mais, coloquem interpretação e escolham português.
Are we all right now?
Estou te ouvindo. Estou ouvindo.
Is it okay? Yeah? Okay.
Estou ouvindo
Tô te
bem.
ouvindo bem.
Não está picando. Vamos ver agora o início e... Não,
We start again. Should we start? Good, good. Okay. I will continue on. Yes? All right, good. This person has an impoverished and uncomfortable emotional and physical relationship to the world, although their presentation is of glitz and shine. One is unable to bear, even momentarily, to be seen up close, beneath the skin. They might be perceived to be winners by others, but by themselves feel internally empty, disillusioned, anxious, confused, alienated. Underlying is a sense of distrust and lack of confidence, filling the emptiness with people, places, and things, attempts to compensate the feeling of being unreal. The emptiness arose from early emotional wounding and lack of correct or close enough attachment with consistent caregivers. As adults, these people become performers, needing attention and seeming superficial. The way of relating to the world is through mimicry and imposter facades, while the adaptation as if comes at the expense of authenticity. They feel flat, like the social media screen, and internal division signals being trapped in unconscious personal, cultural, and historical wounds. These include the unfinished mourning and archetypal anxieties avoided with emotional distancing, compulsions, or perfectionism. These people defend against aspects of reality concerned with absence and loss that are felt to be intolerable. They need the illusions and idealizations of others. They construct a solid and tight defensive package because they don't feel ready for life. Emile dreamt the following. I notice a small door at the bottom of my closet and realize it has been unlocked. I'm worried that all this time I've been painstakingly locking the front and back doors of my apartment, and I didn't even know this door existed. It's a thin door that separates the wall of my unit to the hallway. I feel vulnerable and I lock the door. But the lock is only a small hook latch and doesn't feel like it's strong enough to keep me safe. This personality type will put in much time to prepare and perform and wish to perform, but often does not, and then will back off. He seems dreamlike, living as if, ethereal, and without the feeling he counts for much. Hurt, he tells no one the totality of what he wants and needs, and yet he is bored by the daily grind and the average because it is not exciting or glamorous. The fantasy world has brighter appeal, but also is never satisfied, and he always needs more. Emile said, "When I woke up the next day, I was faced with the mysterious door I did not know or see previously." For Jung, this represented the naked truth, an encounter with the naked truth, and was positive because the dark side is also part of the whole psyche. Nonetheless, the descent to the unconscious is, as Jung said, a narrow door whose constriction is painful to enter. The dream deeply stirred Emile emotionally, awakening him to something forgotten or ignored. He was intrigued, but also scared, as he thought he had been careful and prepared, but had missed the door. How did that happen, and what could it represent? A single dream, like one, remarkable for its surprise, power, and simplicity, can completely change the mood and intentions for the day, week, and foreseeable future. In analysis, the reflector is the dream, which can mirror psyche to reality and reality to psyche. As we spoke, Emile realized he has been defended against aspects he considered shameful, unconsciously holding him in. This is indicated by the insecurely latched door, more upsetting as he did not even know about it. If locked, he felt safe, but now what? To assist in achieving individuation and a deeper connection with life, the dream, occurring at the beginning of an analytical process, is leading him into himself. In fact, he has not adequately formed an internal security. His behavior originates from aggressively self-destructive elements hidden from the awareness of others. Worried he is behind, he feels defeated and lost. He becomes caught in negative thought cycles, self-denigrating to the point of paralyzing, unable to find where he fits or what to develop. Due to the internal confusion, falsity takes over and he becomes an impostor to himself. His inner discourse is composed of the selves he was to become, but not who he is. There are dissociations between mind and body as the personality is disappeared. The inner negative scrutiny makes reality disappointing and fraught with anticipation of rejection. He is a spectator of life, distancing from others, assuming they are smarter, better. He feels separated by a wall that he cannot scale. This is a quote from Virginia Woolf, British novelist of the mid-20th century. "For there is nothing to lay hold of. I am made and remade continually. Different people draw different words from me." There has been a dearth of descriptors and serious attention to the as-if or imposter personality in the psychological literature. This reflects a lack of psychological depth or curiosity towards the intricacy of this personality type. The popularized term and descriptions without the symbolic focus or including the unconscious leave one stuck in a quandary of pain and distress. Jung described this as follows: an inflated consciousness is always egocentric and conscious of nothing but its own existence. It is incapable of learning from the past, incapable of contemporary events, and incapable of drawing the right conclusions about the future. It is hypnotized by itself and therefore cannot be argued with. It inevitably dooms itself to calamities that must strike it dead. This is a personality trapped in the image, attempting the ideal without the ability to be a real self. It is shame-filled for the imposter whose life is based on self-deception, rooted in the need for protection and self-reliance. The imposter shapeshifts to fit any occasion. An imposter operates in the absence of a fully knowable self. These often high-achieving individuals apprehend they will be found out or unmasked as incompetent or unable. Success cannot be solidly achieved or maintained because the personality is weakened from within and identity disjointed. They can look lively, but feel lifeless as a mannequin. Each day the question arises about which costume to put on. The costume represents an ego persona or outer image approach to life. The persona will appear intact, but underneath the personality is in shreds. The need is to avoid the anxiety, loneliness, emotional losses, and the shadow perceived. The encounter with oneself effectively requires an encounter with one's shadow. And as Jung says, in which Jung says, man stands forth as he really is and shows what is hidden under the mask of conventional adaptation. The retreat is from reality, so it does not have to be faced as one feels impotent to cope. The creation of these alternative worlds prevents access to the interior for the means of self-preservation. Identity shifts to please, stand out, or to fit in, but basically to avoid depth and visibility. The real self has become unavailable, so busy complying with constraints imposed personally, culturally, and socially. Whether noticed or not, this person is hidden while in plain sight. The shadow of the imposter has taken over. Estranged from one's affective core, the loss of contact with an authentic self means closing away from others. An independent self or omnipotent self is convinced it needs no others due to the perceived absence of safety. The self is felt as fragile, vulnerable, empty, and dead, as if nothing was there. The inner darkness, the shadow, potential, and energy lies secreted beneath the surface, making the person seem brittle, hollow, and false. This is a quote from an American Black writer in the mid-20th century named James Baldwin. The collision between one's image of oneself and what one actually is always very painful. And there are two things you can do about it. You can meet the collision head on and try and become what you really are, or you can retreat and try to remain what you thought you were, which is a fantasy, and in which you will surely perish. The as-if personality was originally described by Freudian analyst Helena Deutsch in 1942 to be without genuineness and basically imitative. In tracing a history of this psychological construct, there has been a lack of attention in the psychoanalytic literature. The original description portrays a person with impoverished or absent emotional relationship towards both inner and outer worlds. Deutsch tended to dismiss this personality as only superficial, imposter, and without depth. However, Hester Solomon, British Jungian analyst, discovered there is a genuineness that lay within, hidden within, where the sorrows and traumas remained. A depth of emotional lack and grief existed under the facade. The adaptation through mimicry is desperately constructed to obfuscate and defend against being known. The as-if person often feels divided within and cut off from the deeper aspects of the self, especially from their bodily experience. One's behavior turns destructive, indicating being at odds with oneself. Not registering basic body needs or treating the body as a distant object, the body self becomes disjointed. Life is like hanging on a thread, a knot in the throat. Frantic, they will not get whatever they are after, hounded by insecurities. Such people keep themselves together through routines and schedules to follow, rather than relying on their natural instincts. One is easily decentered, ungrounded, with any hint of negativity, and in sorrow, they begin to withdraw and create facades to protect so no one can perceive the real self. Unconsciously, they become subsumed in the separation from any authenticity. The self becomes constructed by eradicating any blemish or problem and hiding the shadow aspects. The fabrication is an artifice of image as the real recedes to the sidelines. Attention remains between the public and the private self. As Jung said, if it were only resistance that he felt, it would not be so bad. In actual fact, however, the psychic substratum, the dark realm of the unknown, exercises a fascinating attraction that threatens to become the more overpowering the further he penetrates into it. One of the hallmarks of the as-if personality is perfectionism. Anything is excluded that might displease, and one aims to avoid whatever could be interpreted as discordant or misshapen. This personality is lured by the fantasy, relief of fantasy, creates images, ideas, and events to cover the assumed personality flaws. There is much shame and panic to to be hidden and denied, striving to be perfect, adopting a persona of confidence and surety, one becomes false. Perfection is never satisfied and inevitably turns destructive. Nothing and no one are good enough or last long enough. The good easily dissipates in each next endeavor needed to prop up the personality. This self-deception can be a reaction to childhood trauma, cultural expectations, or unconsciously reactive to transgenerational issues. Appearing perfect becomes a strategy to emotionally survive and cope with the lingering distrust in the environment, self, and others. The gnawing emptiness signals the lack of a secure identity and denial of reality beyond the internal world of destruction. One is always uneasy and needs validation and positive evaluation by others. One must be stellar and without any issues, or there is the crush of despair and defeat. The sense of solid identity is easily jeopardized in the anticipated abandonment for any infraction. Anguished by the smallest detail and assessed as doing poorly, this reaction is based on low self-esteem and feeling battered, but without reserves or defense to make it through. Self-negating thoughts and actions are set up against imagined standards of perfection. In the progressive deadening of the self, one enters a sort of wandering, repeating the original losses while escaping introspection. Relationships are based on disguise and learned in authenticity. Although social and with the expected presentation, seemingly capable of warmth, emotional depth is stunted, and the person feels unable to emerge or be safely seen. There is also the issue of self-hatred, indicating a basic division between the ego and self, when the spontaneous being of the person is always hated, feared, and attacked. The frantic need is to avoid the impact of the shame and self-hatred and is not easily eradicated. Hatred is paradoxical. It emerges from traumatic origins and involves primitive defense mechanisms of the self, but it manifests itself at a sophisticated level of consciousness where ego fragments have coalesced, albeit in a distorted way, to form a fixed complex. In other words, hatred of self, driven by perfectionism, causes one to become frozen, separated from within. Culturally, social media and superficial focus represents a lack of search for knowing oneself. Identity cannot be found behind the masks of social media touch-ups. The mounting disruption of self is accentuated by a persona set in place for the social media world. This is a perpetual re-impersonation, dependent on the judgment of others and in order to fit in. No complete self is offered or seemingly desired. Instead, the false self and shell of persona houses the identity. He then picks up an identity for a while, becoming it temporarily. She becomes the face of one she imagines looking at her. Aiming to be a media queen or king means packaging themselves to be cloaked in facade. The facade makes it seem they are there when they are not. But where are they? Airbrushed, tinted, trimmed, or reshaped, they become an object, needing to hide the vulnerable and sensitive reactions in the search for self-legitimization. These people are maintained through split selves, partially engaged in relationships, but remaining emotionally hidden, mostly to themselves, unable to commit or find their depth, meaning, or fulfillment. The talents are there, the dedication to their individuality curtailed. Little remains of the intimate and private in social media. It also arouses a sense of isolation as the virtual substitutes for person-to-person contact. Contact with the world is feigned as there is no real personal or touchable entry. Too much becomes reduced to the general or the trivial as appearance substitutes for being. The reality of the emotions seems muted or wildly censored. The passion for self-exposure is stylized for popular consumption. The portrayals, whether true or not, make it seem the idealized and the image is what is sought and lauded. The attempt is to maintain fascination, yet there remains remoteness that does not bring the real person near. The real ego is too weak and living the masks of the false self. Then how can one begin to integrate the shadow? This is another quote from a writer in America called Susan Sontag, again in the mid-20th century. She says about the body, monstrous living body, the slumbering giant that wakes, vomiting destruction, and then sinking back into somnolence, flushes the marrow out of your bones and topples your soul. When the parental figure is too distant, a person, like with this personality type, becomes inhibited, frightened, unable to access healthy assertion. This derives from a lifelong script of inferiority and aggression turned inward, caught in self-deception while debasing the self. As Jung commented, children are so deeply involved in the psychological attitude of their parents that it is no wonder that most of the nervous disturbances in childhood can be traced back to a disturbed psychic atmosphere in the home. Isa, I'm going to skip to page 11 under the part that says, "Where is identity?" Another quote from Jung. She started out in the world with an averted face, and all the while the world and life passed by her like a dream, an annoying source of illusions, disappointments, and irritations. As if people are known to develop pseudo-contacts, substituting for real feeling with others, they behave as if they have emotional relations, but the emotions cannot get through to the real, as this means sharing the one who is and revealing one's true opinions. Too often, concern about the consequences of speaking up leave them without voice. They might even be described as frigid, meaning avoiding emotions, hiding their insufficiencies, and behaving woodenly as if they had real feelings and genuine contact with people. As an example, Fern dreamt of women in a pop-up grid on a pornography internet website. She then saw herself in a house that pops up, and then she was in a smaller house, and this scene was repeated over and over. In the next image, popping up, she is alone in an even smaller grid or house, and there is no obvious way in or out. What does this dream mean? It describes she is encased in a box or a flat square, while the spaces get smaller and she increasingly enclosed. Unable to relinquish the illusion of safety in the way that things were or are, imprisons and creates a death in life existence. The dream scene takes place on a porn site, and she is imprisoned in something sexual, but disconnected and enclosed in the box. She is both the main actress and the observer. The image brings up questions of who she really is. The dream portrays her being objectified by herself, and she alone in the image. Even though it begins with other women also encapsulated, each in a square and not in communication with each other. These could be unrelated aspects of herself, each in an isolated box. The whole image seems fragmented and yet enclosed, linear and mechanically driven, but by what part of her? Jacqueline Rose, a British writer and thinker currently, commented on this. What classical cinema performs or puts on stage is this image of woman as other, dark continent, and from there, what escapes of it is lost to the system at the same time as sexuality is frozen into her body as spectacle, the object of phallic desire and or identification. Here the body expresses distance, disconnect behind the sexuality set to gain attention, but behind a screen. Is this body expressing fragility of self? It might represent disembodied states of psychic deadness and impacting one's relationship to the world. Disturbance in body ownership and body image. The body is objectified and at cross purposes with the need for the sense of oneself as found through the physical. As her dream portrays, Fern's body is used as an object to keep people away. She walks around wanting to be noticed better than others, thinner, appearing younger, smarter. No matter what, she is primarily focused on getting attention, but it must be at a distance. She is cognizant no one knows the real her, and she is content with this, but also at times becomes very, very lonely. This is a talented, intellectual sounding and articulate woman, but quick to rebuff and turn cold. She uses thoughts and words as weapons to defeat and remain removed from others. Quiet in the analytical sessions rarely occurs, as if any potentially reflective space will fill with what she does not know or what she does not want to know. She allows little room for commentary, as if she must defend against any surprises or enter the unfamiliar to avoid the critique she cannot tolerate. This indicates a fragile and fearful ego and a person defended against her depth. In analysis, she develops a fusion-like mode of relating, unable to tolerate the space between herself and myself. She denies any separateness, creating an imagined sameness. To feel safe and unthreatened by any other, the reality of the connection between two separate people must be resisted. She does not take in information and defends against any additional commentary to her story. Relationship means taking the other in, being seen and vulnerable, but this can be overlaid with shame. She enacts what is called manic defense, meaning denying the increasing awareness of limitation, loss, ambivalence, and complexity. It is a defense against the fear of destroying the object, meaning the other, and subsequently the self. Fern has no room for the interactive, no pause to allow different reactions. There's no ability to allow for the smallness necessary to take in new information and to not know. Any understanding countered by its opposite means rejection, so she defends and pushes away. In this, Fern seems omnipotent and in need of no one else, alone as in the box in the dream. Self-feeling has been unconscious and a facade of well-developed glitzy cover. She seems, however, in a half-dead existence. The process into her world will not be simple as she might imagine. The relationship between therapist and client secures trust and evolves dependent on separation and connection between both participants. This process requires the capacity to recognize and gather the multiple personal and collective threads and reconnect them. The transferences are to find a thoughtful and sensitive way for participants to think, feel, and imagine together. However, Fern is taken by fear and anxiety, feeling she cannot survive with another, and instead focuses on being alone. Each therapy session is a flood of material, and over repeating the same stories. She cannot let in anything threaten a precarious sense of self. So her presentation becomes a torrent to deflect away. Learned from her parents' treatment of her, Fern has trouble giving genuinely or to respond flexibly and adaptively to any other's behavior. The demise she fears in her mind is different from her presentation of control. She joked away the disregard experienced as a child, describing a father she likened to the Russian leader Putin, aggressively taking over and pushing in, breaking boundaries. What is yours is mine, and leaving no space for Fern. She relayed an image of herself, enthusiastically running to her father, who said Fern was embarrassing her in her excitement and to be quiet. She recoiled and recalled family gatherings, drunken brawls, crude gesturing, and her father with loud and abusive language. She hid under the table, frightened and alone. This father figure gave no support or way to relate to male energy except to be invisible. From this overbearing father are the themes of insecurity of the self, lovelessness, splintering and disintegration of self, and silencing of voice. Frustrated and lost, all looked neat from the outside, but inside was the mess of deprivation she could not expose. Neither parent made sure there was food at home, and in shame she told no one. Abandonment was what Fern experienced while being engulfed in her mother's expectations. Yet mother taught her nothing about the feminine, maternal, masculine, or being a person. Both physically and emotionally, neither parent could or did confirm Fern's identity or self-agency. She was like in the fairy tale, the little match girl, alone in the winter snow, cold, dark buildings, and she stands between them, shut like the parents, and the lights are out. She becomes colder and more alone, unable to get warm, runs out of matches for warmth, and sadly dies in the end from being forgotten in the cold and people rushing by, not noticing her. Similarly, Fern was left with unmet dependency needs and alone, as if she was also non-existent. Relationships with friends and partners were based on her being the star and entertainer, dancing fast to blur anyone puncturing her defenses. If she is sufficiently protected by what has become a tightly defensive organization, she then does not have to feel. Equally, this happens in the analytical work. Myself as the analyst, with my presence, availability, and questioning, is experienced as a danger to her fragile self-cohesion. Fern was concrete, needing the literal. She did not see meanings in things, why she was stuck, what was obstructed inside. The early relationship wounds detached her from herself, and she lived without dimensionality, numbness, loss of passion, needing to maintain certainty. Like many as if people, Fern could not escape from the old familiar relationship composition. However, through the analytic work, there are moments when she emerges from her psychic retreat of singularity. No longer deniable, she is then faced with the anxieties and hurts. The psychological process takes patience when the unmasking of reality connotes threat to the ego persona so tightly relied upon. Behind the well-calculated front, portraying innocence and appeal, lay the tender vulnerability she learned to repress. Those who are deprived of recognition suffer and are condemned to harbor grave feelings of invalidation of their personness and to live in virtual aloneness. The need for unconditional love, anxiety about expected hostility and being refused has been the norm. The as-if person exists in a land of sterility and unease. This coagulates into an emptiness, fostering of anxiety, and addictions of all sorts occupy time and energy away from herself. Needing continual approval from others, and so involved in her own strivings, she usually does not see anyone else. It might seem otherwise, but she is aware of no other universes than her own. The as-if person has not accessed the capacity to cope with complexity, ambiguity, melancholia, disorientation, and disappointment, as well as pleasure. Heeding the call of one's character means acknowledging the marginalized and chaotic aspects, as well as the joy and enthusiasm, all parts making us real and defining our unique selves. Instead, Fern became a femme fatale, an anima woman, posing, not really knowing love, just garnering attention. All this hid the anxiety about physical and psychological appearance, feeling fragile and vulnerable in the presence of others. In the confrontation with otherness, she becomes entangled in desire and lack, and this indicates a skirmish for recognition. The as-if person quickly intuits their own deficiency, one-sidedness, singularity, threat, and it seems there is something, although it belongs to its own essence, that it lacks. Fern pulls away with a sense of immobility, powerlessness, while the refusal of togetherness is defensive and stagnates attempts to engage with adverse thoughts and isolates her from a range of affects. She had an impaired ability to symbolize, recalling few dreams, and a dismissive attitude toward their value. The uncontrolled information was not to be trusted, and the unknown backed away from. She refused to be disturbed by desire, as the world needed to be smooth and predictable. Fern remained like her dream of being in the box in the pornography website. She wanted to know a bit of herself, but not too much. It was just so she could procure the right words and sound psychologically aware. Would she continue this facade? She had one facelift after another, looking more and more false, signaling increased existence from herself. If the emptiness has become so solidly internalized, there was no curiosity about who she really is, and it seemed at this time it would not be discovered. Again, a quote from Jung: "If a man embraces his wholeness, he can avoid the unhappy consequences of repressed individuation. If he voluntarily takes the burden of completeness on himself, he will not find it happening to him against his will in a negative form." Self and world have been disjointed for the as-if person. Bewildered, where do they turn? The psyche looks to complete itself, to manifest in higher modes of consciousness. The process begins with reflection, time, and inner examination, circling around to find herself. The quest for fulfillment is an organic, developmental, and relational process, making sense of the losses, yearning, needs, anxieties. The point of Jungian work and the challenge of the as-if personality is to find within the as-if fragmentation and disunion opportunities for unique repatterning. Emile, the man I spoke about the insecurely latched door at the beginning, later had a dream. He was on a beach, and 3 men in black capes with a flock of black birds behind them walked past him. One of the men laid a book with the cover decorated in jewels and the pages in an old manuscript style. When he looked up the image online, he found it was an alchemical codex from the Middle Ages. These are powerful images to play with and unravel, taking him into the mystery of himself. However, he did not yet appreciate the wealth of his psyche or the depth of understanding that he could acquire. He did not yet realize the value of the codex or the knowledge it contained appearing in the dream. Yet he knew the appearance of this dream symbol was important to lead him further into his self. Jungian analytical psychology, with its use of symbols, dreams revealing meaning in the complexes, encourages the journey connecting to self and others. It is a place where the chaos and the anxieties absorbed from childhood begin to become thinkable. The search is for the underlying order and connection to the self. This means to accept the vulnerability, fragility, but at the same time enable belief in and support for the future. And I end with a quote from German writer Rilke. We discover, indeed, that we do not know our part. We look for a mirror. We want to rub off the makeup and remove the counterfeit and be real. But somewhere, a bit of memory still sticks to us that we forget. So I will stop my slides and there might be some questions.
Susan, muito obrigada por sua fala. Eu estou aqui impactada com tudo isso que você nos apresentou. Impactada, não tenho nem outra palavra a dizer. Porque quando você fala dessa personalidade do como ser, né, o quanto ela é. A vontade que eu tenho é de acolher, né, uma pessoa assim, mas ao mesmo tempo eu fico com a imagem de que tem uma necessidade do acolhimento e do afastamento também, né, de alguém com uma personalidade do como ser. E gera e causa em nós reações, assim, sentimentos e emoções, né?
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments, and I would agree. And I think that this is a personality desiring to be known, although it is very difficult to know that person. And they desire it, and it makes it difficult because they haven't known the intimacy from the original caregivers. Yes. And also, we all, I think, carry some of this aspect inside of us. So although I spoke about others, I would say we all have it in a different extreme. And it is important that we do not other that person or put them as distant from who we are, because the analytic process, yes, is a self and other. And if we would say, that is that person, not me, we are automatically creating a distance in the analytic process. One other thing I would add is that although the example of Fern was someone who, in fact, went to a certain point, the example of Emile is someone who went farther inside. And this is what happens always. Some people are more ready to go inward. Some people go to a different point, and maybe they will pick it up at a later date. But what I find also fascinating is at the beginning of this definition, it was only attributed to women, not men. And I find it and know that it's with doesn't matter how you identify. But I just say that because in a sense, we have grown from that initial women are superficial or women not of depth or can't do it, put down in some kind of way. And this writing is actually to elevate the possibility that everyone can go for inner work and get to their own point. Yeah. Someone else have a comment?
Só complementar o impactante, assim, é porque me tocou, a tua fala me tocou. Então, quando você fala que não colocar tão distante do outro, é porque tem partes minhas que eu me identifiquei com o que você falou. Então, isso está dentro, eu acho que de cada um aqui. Então, não é tão longe, por isso que eu acho que me impactou tanto, né? Obrigada.
Yes, and in addition to what you said, the other thing that I found very interesting was how people look at the imposter syndrome and the as if personality as, again, as I said, just superficial, only taken with social media, only wanting outer appearance. And I think that is much more defensive, perhaps an adaptation to hide behind. And it does not mean that the person does not have a valuable depth that we would want to be able to invite into our offices and into a relationship which very possibly they have not experienced. Mm-hmm. I would bring up another question, which is something we all might think about. Does this personality type manifest itself differently in different cultures? So I wonder, yeah, does it manifest itself differently in the United States, is where I am, and in Brazil, where you all are? And I am not certain. I just want to bring it up as a possibility because culturally we grow up, how would I say this? Learning our own culture. We don't really grow up learning other cultures. So how then does a personality type manifest itself in each culture? A bit differently is what I think, but I don't know. So it's just something for us to consider, that we're all people, but we have that cultural something's different. Something's different. And that's to honor that. That's why I'm saying it. It's beautiful that we've got a similarity, and it's beautiful that we have difference. And this is also where the as if person gets caught, because they want everything the same. It's much easier if the person is the same. Then you don't have to struggle if you're with same. You can say, well, you know what I'm talking about. and think the person does. But what if they don't? What if they don't? So I think it creates this challenge for us to bring forward, yes, we are the same and we are different. And that's true of everyone who comes into our offices as well as the respect and honor to anyone who is trying to figure out what is going on inside of themselves. And it's not so easy for this personality type because of the layers of vulnerability, defensiveness, fear, and lack of experience in intimacy. I'm going to mispronounce your name. Fafa, is that right? Go ahead. Yes, please. Sorry.
Bom dia, Susan, bom dia a todos, Cirlei. Eu tenho uma questão aqui, é o seguinte, a gente pode dizer que essa personalidade como ser, né, ela precisa de uma companhia, ou então de um outro, literalmente, que seja um ego mais frágil, assim, ou companheiro, ou como amigo, para manter a sua persona. Por causa do, quando você citou o vazio dentro dela, é como se ela precisasse de um outro mais fraco, entre aspas, para ela ser forte, para ela se sentir forte. Entendeu? Assim, não sei se eu me fiz, deu para entender? Tá. Uhum. Obrigada.
Yes. I think I understand what you said. I would say that I'm not sure that the analyst or therapist is bigger, but perhaps knows how to hold the unconscious. So I would put it that way. And also that oftentimes the as if personality or imposter syndrome also has an overlay of narcissism. So we get the narcissism in the sense that it is a very singular way of going about the world. So when they come into analysis, there is a self and other connection. From that, one learns the solidity of self to be able to appear and not just retreat into their own world. They oftentimes they are very singular. If you notice all the images that I had, they are all alone, all alone. And that's the inner world of the as if person. They feel all alone. So you could say that the ego did not really have a chance to be with a solid other. So in analysis, we give the person the chance to be with. It's a with place to come out of the retreat of a narcissistic response to life. Yeah? Okay.
Uhum.
Okay.
Sim,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
obrigada.
Yeah. Anybody else
Agradeço.
have a comment?
Desculpa, a Luna Alva, ela coloca aqui no chat: agradeço e acho extremamente importante sua contribuição. Seu estudo e prática nos localiza e denuncia com cuidado o perigo da falsa proteção sob cascas geladas que nos isolam na medida em que escolhemos as caixas, nas quais elegemos com o que e quem nos relacionar.
gostaria de... Olá, muito obrigada. Me sinto
Wait,
muito feliz.
wait 1 second. 1 second. One more quote. And I say this because it's a Brazilian writer, and I'm going to say it in English, so I'll go slowly so you can translate to the Portuguese. But this is from Clarice Lispector, who wrote this in her book, The Passion According to G.H. This is what she said, and I think it applies to the as-if personality. She wrote, "Something I don't understand was happening. What did she want? That woman who is me. What was happening? How can I explain it to you? Suddenly, the whole world that was me shriveled up in fatigue. I could no longer bear on my shoulders what, and was succumbing to a tension that I didn't know had always been mine. The first sides of a landslide of underground limestone caves collapsing beneath the weight of stratified archaeological layers. There must be someone who understands, and it's inside myself that I must create that someone who will understand." So thank you all. I appreciate your attendance and have a lovely day. Bye. Yeah, yeah.
Você quer?
Na verdade, todo o tempo, além de me situar dentro da clínica e dentro da minha própria psique, penso que isso vai além, está no mundo e está no Brasil atualmente, na dificuldade que as pessoas têm em viver de maneira a promover o encontro de alma, né? Fechadas em ideias e cada vez menos, ou melhor, cada vez mais afastadas da relação com o próprio self. Eu acredito que o seu trabalho também nos leva a refletir o momento atual do ser humano, cada vez mais guardado em cascas geladas. Obrigada.
Thank you very much. And again, I mentioned culture, but we could also say our current times, quite like you're referring to, I think. And our current times really require our authenticity and our truth and being real as much as we possibly can. So thank you for bringing that in very much. And thank you all. I hope you have a lovely day. Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Eu gostaria de ler duas questões aqui, aí nós podemos finalizar, por favor. Débora Denami Rebelo, o medo de envelhecer e obsessão por não estar doente, por ter uma saúde perfeita, enfim, medo da morte. São sintomas e autodefesa na relação de intimidade consigo mesmo? Essa é uma questão. Vocês poderiam responder.
Yes, Isa, it broke up a bit. Could you just give me the essence of the question?
Oi, Isa?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I got it. Yes. Yes, thank you, thank you. Yes, part of the issue of the as-if person and the imposter has to do with fear of aging and fear of, not accessing the beauty of what it is to be a person throughout life's entirety. So too many times, this is part of the perfection. I have to be younger, better, more facelifts, more this, more that, rather than I am lovely as I go through my life and are being as much as I can of my real self, not distorted away and not denying age, but embracing knowledge, understanding, wisdom, companionship, love, and knowing that that can happen throughout life. Was there another comment, Isa? Okay.
Bem, nós temos aqui, obrigada, foi muito rica a apresentação, ouvir sobre a sombra, como reconhecer esses sentimentos e olhar novas possibilidades. A Inês, parabéns pelo evento, e eu quero aproveitar e agradecer a todos a presença, agradecer a você, Susan, pela generosidade, por sua participação. Foi muito rica essa manhã de sábado para todos nós. Muito, muito obrigada. E tá aqui, ó. Parabéns. Parabéns. Obrigada.
Thank you. And thank you. It's my pleasure that it's in Portuguese. So, bye. Bye. Thanks.
Obrigada. Obrigada.
Thank you, Isa. Bye.
Obrigada, Isa. Obrigada, Dani. Obrigada, Débora.